2021 was another eventful year of sporting highs and lows both on and off the field, from shock scandals to Brisbane claiming the 2032 Olympics. As Australia celebrated the arrival of a new generation of emerging stars, fans also mourned the loss of some of the most inspiring, dedicated and talented characters to have ever represented or led the nation. They ranged from three of rugby league's most iconic figures, legendary Test cricketers, a former national Socceroo coach, AFL heroes, Olympic gold medalists and a Wallabies legend to less prolific champions, including a groundbreaking darts player. Then there are the larger-than-life characters who transformed sport forever, such Geoffrey Adelson, who became the first private owner of a sporting club in Australia when he bought the Sydney Swans in the 1980s, to Paul Hogan's constant sidekick John Strop Cornell, who helped Gary Packer make World Series cricket a reality. Daily Mail Australia pays fitting tribute to the sporting champions and colourful figures past and present who left us in 2021. Bob Brett, January 5, aged 67. One of the world's top tennis coaches for 46 years, Brett took the best of what he learned as a protege of the legendary Harry Hopman and guided the careers of the likes of Grand Slam winners Boris Becker, Goran Ivanisevic, Johan Kriek and Marin Cilic and off the court. Recipient of the ATP's 2020 Tim Gullickson Career Coach Award, Brett passed away in a Paris hospital after a 12-month battle with liver cancer. Graham Arthur, January 10, aged 84. When the Hawthorn Football Club named its Team of the Century in 2000, it contained such legendary Hawks as Lee Matthews, Michael Tuck, and Don Scott, all of whom had captained the club to the premiership, but there could be only one candidate to have the C next to his name, and that was Graham Arthur. 3 times the club's best and fairest, Arthur made his debut at half-forward for the Hawks aged just 18, and played 232 games over the next 13 seasons, kicking 201 goals. He also played for Victoria 12 times and coached the Hawks in 1964-65. He was inducted into the Australian Football Hall of Fame in the initial intake in 1996, but as far as Hawthorn supporters are concerned, he will always be best remembered as captain of the club's first ever premiership side in 1961. Colin MacDonald, January 11, aged 88. A tenacious Test cricketer who later played a leading role in Australian tennis administration, Colin MacDonald was at his best when conditions were toughest. His finest innings was in one of the 5 centuries he scored as an opener in 47 tests for Australia between 1952 and 1961, but the 89 he ground out over 5.5 hours in the second innings of the 4th test of the 1956 Ashes series at Old Trafford, the match known as Lakers Test. With England spinner Jim Laker taking 19 wickets for the match and totally bamboozling the rest of the Australian batters, MacDonald put up a lone fight in an innings described by England opener Peter Robinson as one of the best ever played in Ashes history. He later served as Executive Director of the Lawn Tennis Association of Australia for 11 years and was a driving force behind the creation of the National Tennis Centre at Melbourne's Flinders Park. Frank Roque, January 12, aged 88. In 1969, Frank Roque became Australian football's first full-time coach when he migrated from Yugoslavia to join St George Budapest Club in Sydney. Appointed Socceroos coach in 1983, Roque was in charge of the national team for 89 games, recording 41 wins and 22 draws. The highlight was qualifying and making it to the knockout stages of the 1988 Seoul Olympics. When his international coaching career ended in 1990, Roque continued to contribute to Australian football through numerous club coaching stints in the National Soccer League before retiring and moving to Serbia in 2003. Harry Gallagher January 20, aged 96. He coached hundreds of young swimmers in his career, but Harry Gallagher will always be remembered for his association with the greatest of them all, Dawn Fraser. Gallagher spotted Fraser's potential as she skylarked at Balmain Baths and talked her into joining his squad. With the old fox melding her headstrong individualism with a disciplined tactical approach, the Gallagher-Fraser team proved unbeatable, Dawn taking gold in the 100 meters freestyle at the 1956, 60 and 64 Olympics. Their bond would last forever, with Dawn driving through the night from her home on the Sunshine Coast to be at the bedside of Mr. Gallagher on the Gold Coast when he passed away. Tommy Rodonick's April 7, aged 71. Of Australian Rugby League's most popular personalities, Tommy Rodonick's earned legend status as a pugnacious halfback and inspirational coach, and remained in the spotlight as a politically incorrect media performer and hilarious after-dinner speaker. Raised in Cowra, NSW, the son of European migrants, Rodonick served 3 years in the Air Force before joining the Western Suburbs Magpies, for whom he would play 201 games from 1969–79. Retiring after 3 years with the Newtown Jets, who he led to the 1981 Grand Final, he played 31 Tests and 9 World Cup matches for Australia, and represented NSW 22 times, including as Blues captain in the inaugural State of Origin match in 1980. As coach of the Blues in 1997, he instigated the notorious cattle dog call as a signal for NSW players to start an all-in brawl, and in his later years bemoaned the lack of biffo in the modern game. After being diagnosed with inoperable cancer in 2019, he passed away on the Gold Coast, having achieved his final goal of Mach 70. Rex Aubrey, April 20, aged 86. The youngest member of the Australian swimming team at the 1952 Helsinki Olympics, Rex Aubrey died in the US, where he had lived for almost 70 years. Born and raised in Parkes in western NSW, Aubrey was 17 years old when he finished 6th in the final of the 110 yards freestyle in Helsinki and took up a scholarship at Yale University immediately after the Games. In 1954 he joined the Australian team in Vancouver, Canada for the Commonwealth Games, where he won bronze in the 110 yards freestyle and gold in the 220 yards freestyle relay. After graduating from Yale in 1958, he worked as athletic director at the Detroit Athletic Club from 1962 until his retirement in 2002. John Conrad's, April 25, aged 78. The swimming legend dominated the pool as a teenager in the late 1950s before making his name at the 1960 Olympics in Rome, where he won 3 medals, including gold in the 1,500-meter freestyle at the age of 17. He became the 3rd Australian to win the event after Andrew Boy Charlton and Murray Rose. He also won bronze in the 400 meters freestyle and 4x200 freestyle relay. Conrad set 26 individual freestyle world records between the 200 meters and 1,500 meters events before he turned 15. Born in Riga, Latvia, Conrad emigrated with his parents Janis and Elsa, grandmother, and sisters Eva and Ilse in August 1944, initially to Germany. Living in Germany until 1949, their application to immigrate to the U.S. was refused on account of the large size of the family. They were relocated to a camp at Uranquinty, 15 kilometers south of Wagga Wagga in the NSW Riverina region, and later moved to Bankstown in Sydney's southwest. John won 3 gold medals at the Empire and Commonwealth Games in Cardiff in 1958 and won every Australian freestyle title the following year. He missed out on qualifying to compete in his pet event and defend his title at the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo, where he swam in the heats of the 4x200-meter relay. After retirement, Conrads worked as a swimming coach before he becoming the Australasian director of cosmetics giant L'Oreal. He also assisted with the winning bid for the 2000 Sydney Olympics. Frank Costello, May 2, aged 83, a self-made multimillionaire who built his parents' Geelong grocery store into a publicly listed corporation. Frank Costa stepped in when the Geelong Football Club faced bankruptcy in the late 1990s. Taking over as president in 1998, he negotiated a rescue package with the banks, putting up his own property and assets as surety, and led the club to a golden era with premierships in 2007 and 2009 before stepping down in 2010. He remained patron of the club until his death. Bob Fulton AM, May 23, aged 73. Few people have made the impact and contribution at all levels of a sport that Bob Fulton achieved with Australian Rugby League. Born in the north of England but raised in Wollongong, south of Sydney, Bozo made his debut with the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles aged 19 in 1966 and captained the side in the grand final 2 years later. He won premierships with the club in 1972, 73 and 76, before leaving to join the Eastern Suburbs Roosters after 219 games and a club record 129 tries. He represented Australia 35 times, scoring 25 tries, and scored 14 tries in 16 games for NSW. His playing days over, he turned to coaching, taking Manly to premierships in 1987 and 1996 and was Australian national coach from 1989 to 1998, during which time the team lost just 6 of their 39 games. Off the field, Fulton was a major power broker at all levels of the game and played a key role as a recruiter for the Australian Rugby League in its fight with Super League in 1995. For over 20 years he was a member of the top-rating radio program The Continuous Call Team. One of the 4 original immortals named in 1981, Fulton died in Sydney after a very private battle with cancer. Rick Mitchell, May 30, aged 66, taking up athletics at the age of 17 in order to get fit for rugby union. Sydney-born Rick Mitchell discovered a love for the track and became Australia's greatest ever 400 metres runner. 5 days too old to contest the 1974 Australian Junior Championships, at 19 Mitchell finished second in the senior 400 metres and 2 years later was competing in the first of his 3 Olympics in Montreal, finishing 6th. In 1978 he was back in Canada for the Edmonton Commonwealth Games, winning gold in the individual 400 metres and anchoring the 4x400 relay to 3rd place. His greatest international achievement was to come 2 years later at the Moscow Olympics. After setting a new Australian record and establishing himself as one of the best 400 metres runners in the world over the previous 12 months, Mitchell won Olympic silver in Commonwealth record time, less than a quarter of a second behind Russia's Viktor Markin. It remains Australia's last individual men's Olympic running medal. Mitchell carried Australia's flag at the opening ceremony of the 1982 Commonwealth Games in Brisbane, where he won silver in 400 metres and 4x400 relay. He was again team captain at his final Olympics in LA, where he was part of the fourth-placed 4x400 relay team that set an Australian record that still stands. Mitchell settled with his family in Brisbane after his retirement from athletics, working as a management consultant and regular contributor to local media. He died from prostate cancer. Monique Hall, June 9, aged 48, a much-loved member of the Western Australian sled dog community, the single mother of 2 autistic boys, was killed in a car accident when driving her family from WA to start a new life in her home state of Queensland. Jeffrey Adelson, June 11, aged 78, medical practitioner, entrepreneur and media tart. The flamboyant Dr. Jeffrey Adelson was responsible for one of the most colourful and preposterous chapters in AFL history. The first private owner of a sporting club in Australia, Adelson was granted the licence of the Sydney Swans on July 31, 1985, and within months they were the hottest ticket in town. With glamorous young wife Leanne by his side and star-signing Warwick Capper wowing crowds with his screamer marks and spray-on shorts, Adelson could do no wrong, or so it seemed. It would later transpire that his medical clinics with their white grand pianos and chandeliers were drowning in debt. The helicopter was a rental and even Leanne's pink Dedo Massa sports car was repossessed. A bid to buy the Cronulla Sharks Rugby League club failed, and within 3 years Adelson was out of the sports business and trying, unsuccessfully, to stay out of jail. But hey, it sure was fun while it lasted. John Cornell, July 23, aged 80, best remembered as comedian Paul Hogan's on-screen sidekick Strop and a pioneer of the Byron Bay hospitality and property boom, John Cornell played a major role in one of the greatest revolutions in the history of professional sport as the chief engineer of Kerry Packer's World Series cricket. As manager of Australia's champion fast bowler Dennis Lillee in the mid-1970s, Cornell was concerned about the low wages the top players were being paid and approached Packer with the idea of a one-off televised match with proceeds to the players. Packer upped the ante to an entire takeover of the game and told Cornell to organise it, which he did, much to the chagrin of the cricket establishment and the everlasting gratitude of the players. A generous supporter of many charities, he died at his home in Byron Bay from complications of Parkinson's disease. Colin Forbes, July 25, aged 89, a tough and deceptively fast front rower, Forbes was overlooked by the coaches at renowned rugby union nursery St Joseph's College, Nudgee, but eagerly embraced by selectors at Brisbane Brothers Club who rushed him into first grade while still a teenager. At 20 he was packing down for Queensland against NSW and chosen for the 1952 Wallaby Tour of New Zealand. He made his Test debut in the second Test of the 1953 Tour of South Africa, a famous 18-14 victory to the Wallabies, which was the Springboks' first loss since 1938. With rugby an amateur sport at the time, Forbes retired from representative football after getting married in 1955 but answered an SOS the following year to face the Springboks in their 2-test series, playing the first Test in Sydney and second in Brisbane in what would be his 6th and final Test. Kyle Anderson, August 24, aged 33, the first Aboriginal player to qualify for the Professional Darts Corporation. Anderson came to the attention of the international darts community when he threw a 9-dart finish to win a game at the 2014 World Championship. Nicknamed the Original and based in Nottingham, England from 2012 to 2020, he was a semi-finalist at the 2017 European Championship and the 2018 PDC World Cup of Darts. In 2017 he won the PDC Auckland Masters. A very proud Noongar man from Perth, he died from complications associated with diabetes. Greg Park, September 25, aged 73, a charismatic ex-policeman who for 10 years held the record for the most marks taken in a season. Park played 119 games at centre half-forward for Melbourne from 1968 through 1973, kicking 169 goals including a club-best 62 in 1972. His league record of 238 marks in 1970 stood until beaten by Gary Dempsey with 241 in 1980. He played for Footscray, now Western Bulldogs, in 1974-75, kicking 56 goals in 37 games. He died after a long illness on September 25, the day his old clubs played each other in the AFL Grand Final. Norm Provon, October 13, aged 88. It took Norm Provon until the age of 85 to be inducted as Rugby League's 13th Immortal, but those who saw the man known as Sticks in his prime would argue that the honour should have come almost 40 years earlier at the first induction in 1981. At 193 centimeters and 99 kilograms, a particularly large man for his era, the long striding second rower boasted outstanding speed, was a devastating defender and inspirational leader. Joining the St. George Dragons in 1950, he played a record 256 games for the club over the next 15 seasons, including the first 10 of its 11 consecutive grand final wins between 1956 and 1966, the last 4 as captain-coach. He also played 14 tests for Australia and went on to coach St. George, Parramatta and Cronulla before embarking on a successful business career in retail and hospitality. Ray Alsop, October 20, aged 87, a rover who played 54 games for Richmond in the VFL from 1955 to 1959 and represented Victoria in 1957. Ray Alsop is best remembered as the originator of Auskick, the league's first full-time administrator. Alsop saw potential in the mini-matches played by children at half-time of senior games in the 1960s and 70s, and developed Vikick, which in turn became Auskick, the junior participation program which has introduced Australian football to upwards of 200,000 young boys and girls each year since 1980. Jim Phipps, October 22, aged 89, a fixture of Wallaby backlines in the mid-1950s, Jim Phipps' initial first-grade match was the 1950 Sydney Grand Final. Born in Java, Phipps moved with his family to Sydney at the outbreak of the Second World War and attended Barker College, Hornsby, where he and his 3 brothers starred on the rugby field. After school, Phipps attended Hawkesbury Agricultural College, where he was spotted by an official of the Gordon Rugby Club. Invited to train with the club's first-grade squad, he was pitched straight into the grand final side and within 2 seasons was on the Wallaby Tour of New Zealand. He would go on to play 11 tests, mainly in the centres, but could cover full-back, wing and fly half if required. He retired after badly dislocating his ankle on the 1956 tour of Great Britain, but remained active in the game as a coach, referee and administrator. His brother Peter toured alongside him on the 1955 Wallaby Tour of New Zealand but was forced to pull out of the second test after being injured in a midweek match and never got another chance to play a test. In 1999, the ground at Barker College where the Phipps brothers learned their rugby was named Phipps Field. Ashley Mallett, October 29, aged 76. When his days of spinning a cricket ball were over, Ashley Mallett made a second career spinning yarns. one of Australia's best-ever off-spinners, Malik took 132 wickets in 38 tests between 1968 and 1980. Quietly spoken with a dry wit, he earned the ironic nickname Rowdy and was a personal favourite of Australian captain Ian Chappell on and off the field. Originally from Western Australia, he headed to South Australia in search of greater opportunities and found them in a 183-match first-class career that netted 693 wickets. Highlights of his Test career include a date for 59 against Pakistan in 1972 and a match haul of 10 wickets in the fifth Test of the 1969 series against India in Chennai. When his playing days ended, Malik found success as a prolific author, penning biographies of his contemporaries such as Chappell and Jeff Thomson, as well as thoughtful studies of the game's history. His final book, a biography of Neil Harvey, was published in June. He died after a long battle with cancer. Alan Davidson AMMBE, October 30, aged 92, regarded as one of cricket's best-ever left-arm fast bowlers. All-rounder Davidson was also a hard-hitting batsman whose skill as a close infielder earned him the nickname the Claw. For 33 years president of the NSW Cricket Association, he will always be remembered for the role he played in the game's first tied test between Australia and the West Indies at the Gabba in 1960. Having broken a finger during catching practice, Davidson was in doubt before the match, but produced one of Test cricket's greatest all-round performances. He took 135 and scored 44 in the first innings and 687 in the second before heading out to bat with Australia in all sorts of trouble at 5:57, chasing 233 for victory. Davidson and local hero Ken Mackay took the score to 92 before Mackay fell, and Davidson was joined by his captain Richie Benaud. Believing that attack was their best form of defence, the two Aussies put the pressure back on the Windies with aggressive hitting, and Australia was just 7 runs short when Davidson was run out for his highest Test score of 80, leading to arguably the most exciting end to a match in the game's history. With his heroics, Davidson had become the first player to take 11 wickets and score more than 100 runs in a Test, a feat matched since only by Ian Botham, Imran Khan, and Shakib Al Hassan. Russell Ebert, November 5, aged 72, an official legend in the South Australian Sport Hall of Fame. Ebert played a club record 392 games with the Port Adelaide Magpies in the SANFL. A 4-time Magree medalist as the competition's best and most brilliant player, he won 3 premierships and 6 club best and fairest awards. Ebert made his debut for the Magpies in 1968 at the age of 18 and was the club's leading goal kicker in his first season. Victorian clubs chased his signature relentlessly, but he refused to leave his home state until 1979, when he finally agreed to play one season with North Melbourne, as long as the club flew him from Adelaide each Thursday and back after the match on Sunday night. Back at Port Adelaide the next year, he retired as a player after the 1985 season but continued to coach the club for the next 3 years, blooding many of the players who helped Port win admission to the AFL. One of 4 footballers to be honoured with a statue at Adelaide Oval, his bronze likeness stands in the same area as that of Sir Donald Bradman. He passed away 11 months after being diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. Jason Plummer, November 15, aged 52, a Commonwealth Games gold medalist at the age of 17, Jason Plummer was one of the most promising of a generation of swimmers whose success saw the 1,500 metres freestyle labelled Australia's race. At the 1985 Australian Championships, Schoolboy Plummer finished second in the 400 meters, 800 meters and 1,500 meters behind fellow Queenslander Michael Mackenzie, but turned the tables at the Edinburgh Commonwealth Games the next year, winning the 1,500 meters from Mackenzie and Canada's Chris Chalmers. Also an outstanding surf swimmer who won the 1987 Australian and 1988 World titles, Plummer competed at the 1988 Seoul Olympics at the age of 19, failing to make the final of the 1,500 meters and finishing fourth in the 4x200 relay. He moved to the U.S. the next year, competing for the Stanford University swim team and earning a degree in psychology, and died of a heart attack at his American home. Peter Mulholland, December 16, aged 68, the inaugural coach of the short-lived Western Reds Rugby League franchise, earned renown as one of the game's best-ever junior coaches after turning St. Gregory's College, Campbelltown into a schoolboy powerhouse, winning the Commonwealth Bank Cup 6 times between 1984 and 1993. After taking the North Sydney Bears reserve grade side to the 1993 Premiership, he coached the Reds in 1995–96. He then turned to talent spotting and recruitment, playing a major role in putting together Penrith's title-winning squad in 2003 and the Canberra Raiders' 2019 Grand Final side. Regarded as one of the nicest men in the game, Mulholland was struck down by a rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Alan Carty, December 19, aged 76, Alan Carty's 7th game of senior grade rugby was his Wallaby debut. A phenomenally talented all-round athlete, Carty could have been an Olympian if he hadn't decided to join his local rugby club. As a junior he finished third in the 220 yards final at the Australian Athletics Championships, beating Peter Norman, who would win silver in the 200 metres at the 1968 Olympics. Carty was also an outstanding discus thrower but chose instead to try his hand at rugby. Fronting up to Drummoyne Rugby Club, he was given a start in the 4th grade side, but after scoring 4 tries in his first game was rushed into 1st grade. 5 games later he was running out for Australia against the British Lions at the SCG. He would play 11 tests before signing a lucrative contract with the Eastern Suburbs Roosters Rugby League club, but played only a few games before being forced to retire due to injury. Concentrating on business, he made a fortune as a property developer, splitting his time between a waterfront home at Coogee and his property Linton near Goulburn in the NSW Southern Tablelands. A horse racing enthusiast, Carty bought Linton in 1986 as a base to breed and train his horses, but when a local equestrian official asked if the property would still be available for the small annual event that had been held there in the past, Carty threw himself into it, over the next 41 years building the Linton Horse Trials into one of the premier dates on the country's eventing calendar. Prior to the 2000 Sydney Olympics, Carty made the property available as a residential training centre for the Australian equestrian team. In appreciation, he was presented with a commemorative Olympic gold medal. Alan Carty died following a fall at his Coogee home.